Hey guys, I wanted to talk about Mother 2, aka Earthbound. This is, I know, very dear to a lot of people's hearts, and I never really got into the Mother series until I actually played Earthbound Beginnings on the Nintendo Switch, like Virtual Console or whatever, for free, and I was shocked how good it was, and so I thought, okay, I need to play Earthbound now. I need to know what this game is and why so many people love it. Um, it's so interesting how, well, obviously how much better Earthbound looks to Earthbound Beginnings or Mother 1 or whatever you want to call it. I've heard it called Earthbound Zero, but I think that's a mod or something, so I won't confuse it. I'll just call it Mother 1. But yeah, Earthbound. I don't know, it's good, it's interesting. I understand definitely the quirkiness of the game, but for me it was honestly just in general a very interesting game conceptually. I find that Mother 3 is a bit more emotional with its storytelling, while Earthbound, it's a bit more quirky and just you're in these weird situations. You go from, I think my favorite part of the game, whereas when you go to the night version of Foreside, or the shadow realm of Foreside or whatever, and you fight, abstract art paintings and other things like this. And it's just kind of weird and out there, and you're like, okay, cool, this is happening, but it's a really cool mood or whatever. And you just kind of accept it. Something that has always reminded me of the Earthbound art style is, Charlie Brown. I'm sure there is some inspiration there, but I've always found it a little bit funny or silly. And of course, like, just everything about Earthbound is like quintessential, like a family-friendly American kind of game. And I think the actual setting of Earthbound lends a lot to its character. In that, people are used to JRPGs going to magical fantasy lands or feudal Japan or medieval Europe or Lord of the Rings-esque fantasy worlds or whatever. But here you're going to America. You're going to basically a very normal, run-of-the-mill, small town America. And I feel this is very much based on, kind of like family-esque oriented movies. You have the brother, the sister, the mom, the dad, and it's just trying to capture that wholesome, almost 1960s or like, innocent lifestyle of a family home, and just using that as the basis and the tone for the rest of the game. And I've often said that I like to think that the Mother series is seen through the eyes of an actual mother, whether that's an actual mother in the game or more of a metaphysical kind. And on that point, as I said, Earthbound is more interesting to me than it is emotional. There are a lot of very interesting metaphysics at play here. Things like, as above, so below, the shadow self, the ego. There's a surprising amount of very, like, just interesting spiritual kind of patterns or elements that are just really, really shocking. And that's where I think Earthbound really shines through, where it can be incredibly simple and, easy and quirky and silly. And, it has like things like talking mole rats and oh my god, I remember the one part I got stuck in this game was when you have to get the seven notes or signs or whatever. And I think the second last one or something are this race of, I forget what they are, they're like rock people in this cave, and you can't get down into the prehistoric hole area because they don't know, they're too shy, and you need to get like a book about confidence from Foresight in this convoluted side quest, so that you can give them the book and then they can get the courage up to move aside or talk to them. So it's things like that are like, you don't think about it at the time, like, okay, this is my side quest, but you remember it afterwards, and like, what the heck was that? Like, that was so strange. I also think it's funny at the beginning of this game, your main antagonist is your next door neighbor, Porky. He's just this rich, spoiled kid. And again, like the rich, spoiled kid who gets everything he wants is the villain. That's another thing you'd see in like I don't know, Home Alone 2 or something. I've never seen that movie, but I recall something like that, you know? Yeah, it has that Family Channel movie vibe. I don't know what else to say about it than that. But yeah, you know, you have all these weird quirkiness aspects, and then you have really serious things happen and really emotional things happen. And in the intro here too, we're gonna, you know, meet a character called Buzz, who is literally a bumblebee who gives the prophecy of what Ness is going to do for the rest of the game, but is like completely irrelevant. And then they make a big deal of it, like, oh, I'm so irrelevant that I show up in the credits, and it's like a very self-aware haha kind of moment. And you know, it is possible to have too much of that in a game, but I think Earthbound hits it dead on in terms of how self-aware it is of its own video gaminess, and how unimportant certain characters are, and how like dumb the situation you are in actually is. And so it has this duality between being very serious and very silly that I think really makes it a very memorable experience. And again, the setting is I like to call it mythological mundanity. You know, take something very simple, something very everyday, but it's how you address it and how you talk about it that makes it interesting. I think a prime example of something like that is, you know, Twin Peaks, which is also, you know, the Japanese version of that would be Deadly Premonition, which is a game I love, but it is so bad. It is so broken, but I love that game. Oh man, I don't want to go on a tangent about Deadly Premonition. There was one game where I bought it and I felt ripped off, and I forced myself through the first chapter. I'm like, oh, okay, this is actually, I understand now. This is really good. But in any case, I think I don't know, I would say Mother 3 has a bit more, it's a bit better because it just has more context for certain things or certain situations you're in. In Earthbound, you'll just find yourself wandering through a cave fighting starmen or fighting moles, and there's not really a reason why, or you'll be on some quest and you have no idea why. There's a bit more context to Mother 3, but yeah, then again, not so much. But it does feel like it's a bit pointless playing the game sometimes. And honestly, a lot of RPGs, a lot of games, when you're in that middle section slog where it's just padding by the developers, you know, don't know or don't know what you're doing, it kind of feels like I feel like putting down the game now or something. So, and I think every game suffers from that. It is interesting though. I can't help but think of E.T. as like one of the main inspirations from this, just because it's about aliens and kids, and Mother 1's story is actually fairly emotional in terms of what its story and point is. There's a lot of things in Earthbound that are very interesting, but I feel like when it comes together as a whole, I'm not really sure how to feel about it. I will say, though, the ending sequence is phenomenal. It is one of the most interesting and memorable endings. And of course, as everyone knows, the final boss of the game, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but the final boss, Gigas, wow. I've never seen or encountered a more like intense and hellish depiction of a figure than that. I won't go too much into it, but it's like you're fighting the concept of evil itself, and especially when you're in the context of like these little kids going up against it, it's really even more messed up in that case. You know, if you're someone like Dante, a demon slayer, it's like not a big deal. If anything, it's freaking cool, right? But when you're like an 8-year-old kid and you're fighting the concept of evil and demons, like you feel it more conceptually than if it was just a more physical, normal thing. Another thing that's nice about Earthbound is, of course, the backgrounds of the enemies that you fight, the sound effects, all the weird little status effects that are different from other RPGs. Things like crying, which make you, miss your target. Confusion, which makes you obviously attack other characters. I'm trying to think, there's paralysis. Oh, those are all the normal ones, but I know there's weird ones. I just can't think of them right now. I think you can get fleas. You can definitely get fleas in Mother 3, which is funny. So you can use special powers. It's also interesting how very similar Earthbound is to Mother 1, and how you your first two party members, it's Jeff and Paula, I think. And I say I'm stumbling over that because they're so similar to the first two, because there's like a girl and also a nerdy guy with glasses in Mother 1, and if I mix them up, I'm sorry, but they're very, very similar. The only different guys are the big buff guy in the last town in Mother 1, and Pooh in Earthbound. And I guess just on that, I know this game is like very popular with certain people, and I find that it's interesting because this game is not to shy away from stereotyping, let's say, and the people who seem to praise Earthbound are people who are also very vehement against stereotyping, but Earthbound does like a lot of it in very subtle ways and not so subtle ways. And like, I'm sorry, but we need to talk about Pooh. I was always confused. I'm like, okay, this must be, when I first saw it in Smash Brothers, like, okay, this must be some kind of translation thing or whatever, there's a lot of swear words in Japanese because, it's always that's just the structure of their language. You're going to find one of those things. So I thought Pooh was like some kind of, a pun or something, or some Japanese name, but no, he's an Indian prince. And his name is Pooh. And if you walk around his little village where he lives, everyone, eats curry and is pooing everywhere. And you're like, okay, sure. And it's so silly and natural hearted, but I know there are some people who today would be obviously, they would be so offended by it. But I just thought it's so blatant. They called him Pooh because they poo. and that's the reason. And it's so funny to me. It's so ridiculous. But aside from that, I think what's interesting also to mention is like it doesn't care, about it. Like it makes that joke, and then it goes on to give one of the most interesting and horrific character developments I've ever seen for like a late game character, where Prince Pooh has to go on this vision quest. And besides, if Giagos was not in the game, this would be one of those horrifying things I've ever seen in video games, where Pooh meditates and comes into contact with this spirit or this being, I guess, and it says, I shall grant you immense pain. I shall take away thou arms and thy sight and thy tongue and thy hearing. I shall take away all things that make you you. And of course, you can say no to all these dialogue options, and if you do, you quote unquote fail. The training mission, and the training of the meditation, which is supposed to be that you're supposed to, I guess, the height of Hindu or Buddhist thought, I guess, is that you're supposed to meditate so that you are no longer the thing that you are. That all reality, all materiality is subjective, and that if you only use mind over matter, again, this is a very metaphysical concept. If it's mind over matter, you can literally become anything else or anyone else, and like the wheel of Dharma or whatever rotating for infinity, you are reborn as another creature, and it's only a matter of your karma that determines that outcome. and that's contrasted by the guy who's an Indian prince whose name is Pooh. It's just again, it's super serious and super silly, and I think that's really the formula that makes Earthbound work. And again, you fight like, you know, crows with sunglasses, and you fight angry shopping bag ladies, literal Karens. You fight cars that are out of control, and I find that it says that a lot of the time, you know, the enemy wasn't defeated, but the enemy became tame, as if you didn't actually hurt them or kill them or something. And you have all these ridiculous, just ridiculous things that are like, okay, let's take something normal and just make it silly. And then you have like some groovy, oh yeah, you can beat the crap out of hippies in this game. So, hey, there's something for everyone. And it plays this groovy tune or whatever. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's the perfect mix of silliness and seriousness that makes it work like this. And I think that's a lot of its, that formula is a lot of things that its clones or predecessors have tried to imitate and have really failed in that. They're either one, too much of the other. Usually they're just too silly that they don't bother explaining their game. Like something that's coming to mind is Y2K or Yik, or however you pronounce it. Also, it's interesting that I didn't realize this. I thought it was the same character from Mother 1 to this one, but Ness is different from Ninten, who is the main character unofficially of the Mother 1. So this is a different character, which is interesting, I guess. In terms of the story, I don't know. It's kind of all over the place, but it's interesting, I suppose. You have the rich kid Porky who ended up, becoming this, empire and owning, the mayor. And, you have all this weird spiritual stuff happening. One thing that we see both in Mother 1 and Mother 2, but not in Mother 3, is that a common theme is that the local animals are going crazy. And Mother 3, Porky literally makes chimeras and makes weird-ass animals that attack you on sight. But in both of these games, it's like the alien interference is controlling and making the local wildlife go crazy. And so the natural order is kind of upset, and you have to like bring it back to normal, essentially. One thing about this game is something they never explained that really bugged me, that I just didn't know, is that there didn't seem to be any penalty for dying, and so I just thought, I could just restart over and over again. But you lose like 50 or 30% of your money that you have on hand, and no one ever told me that. And when I realized it, I realized I had lost a lot of money, and it's like, I shouldn't. That's why you deposit your money in the phone, or in the cash thing, whatever. I also have to say one thing about this game, that it has the save system ever, where you have to go through this same freaking dialogue with your dad every single time you want to save. And it's not a couple sentences, it's like a paragraph almost. And if you accidentally click like no or yes, or even if you do successfully save, he'll go through like, you're pushing it, son. You're just like your mom. You're always going to the end of the field. You're always, and it's just like, I don't need to hear this every single time. Another thing that was difficult was item management, that if you wanted to store your items, you had to call up your sister, and she'd run over with Escargot Express. And if you accidentally sent something, or you just wanted to see the inventory, you'd have to call her. And then I think if you like called her from the thing, then from the phone, then you'd have to leave and come back. And it was a nightmare. It was not fun. Yeah. Another thing that's very interesting through all three games actually is the focus on music. A big character in this game is the Runaway Five, which is this band basically, and they basically act as a plot device where it's like, oh hey, we got to get the band together. And I think even to get to 3, I believe, or from 3 to somewhere else, you have to basically get their tour bus up and running, and then they play the music that keeps the ghosts away, which is funny because that's like an ancient tradition that certain masks would keep away bad spirits and music as well. And I think that's I don't know, that's really funny, but it's like it's a charming thing. And like, there's the bands in all these games. I think in in Mother 3, it's not AC/DC, it's DCMC or something. And you kind of, there's the music and a band for some reason is really a big fixture in all of these movies. And again, it makes me think of those it makes me think of those kind of movies where there's a band or something, and that's the main point of the thing. And when the movie's over, the band comes and plays a song and everyone celebrates, like, yeah. And that seems to be a strong theme that's definitely in these games. It's also funny that all this time, ever since Smash Brothers, I called the place Onett. However, after playing this game, I believe the correct pronunciation is Onett, because I didn't connect that the towns in this game are Onett, Tucson, Threed, and Fourside. And when I knew Fourside and Onett from Smash, I still can't say Onett, though. It feels wrong. It should be Onett, but whatever. When I saw the other two, I'm like, oh, okay, this is how they're supposed to be pronounced. It's interesting, though, because in Mother 1, all the places are named after, like, real places, but, like, parodies. I didn't really get it at the time, but Spokane in Mother 1 is supposed to be Spokane, Washington. and I'll just see certain, like, U.S. town names or something. I'm like, oh, that's what that's a parody of. It'd be really funny, and it would happen over the years, and I would think back to Mother 1. But here it's very much like literally 1, 2, 3, 4. And of course Forsyth is supposed to be New York or whatever, and in Mother 3 we have New Pork City, and I'm just it kills me. But in Mother 3 aren't as many parodies or whatnot. Again, there's also a lot of fourth wall breaks. Characters will talk about it's the Super Mario games and other things like that. And then there's just dialogues that I really appreciate. Like, there's this one guy who's, I forget which town he's in, but he's just standing, like, in these bushes, and all he says is, like, do not think I am an ordinary man, even though I am an ordinary man. It's like, okay. Again, all the dialogue in these games is very kind of straightforward and sort of vindictive. I'm not sure how to say, but it's just of an essence. This person is a certain way, and it's not saying it's good or bad. That is just how they are, and it's kind of silly and weird, and you just have to accept it. But yeah, the boss fights, I feel, are actually fairly hard in this game. I needed to get used to, basically, even before the boss fights, to going all out. Once you get your most powerful thing, if it's PK Fire Omega or PK Starstorm or what have you, like, you would use that as soon as you got it, and you'd use those powers right out the gate, and then you'd have to find, like, a hot spring or something to heal up and get your energy back, because then once you get your EXP, you get your EXP. But I found bosses were really hard. I remember, like, the 4 Mole Brothers or something. That was really difficult, because you had to fight each one of those guys, like, in a row. And going into the boss fight was the exact same thing. It was always like, okay, boost your defense, boost your side defense, boost your physical defense, offense down on the enemy, defense down on the enemy. You would just spam status ailments for at least 3 turns. You would spam status ailments for 3 turns until you were good, basically, to start doing damage. And you would just kind of tank every boss, is almost how it would work. There are some bosses where you have to get creative and you use Psi Reflect, because their Psi powers are really powerful, and you send it back at them. Something really interesting, again, as I'm playing this game, that I didn't get initially, is that when you get the Franklin badge, like, that's a very iconic item from the Earthbound series. In the item description, it says, oh, this is based off Benjamin Franklin, who flew a kite and got the electricity to flow through it. And in this game, it acts as an item that reflects electricity. I'm just like, oh, right, the Franklin badge after Benjamin Franklin, of course. It's also interesting, there were hotels in Earthbound and Mother 1, but not in Mother 3. You just kind of sleep wherever, honestly, until money is invented. And you don't really need it, because there is hot springs everywhere. Oh yeah, I remember the skip sandwich is the only way to really speed up in this game. I remember we're stacked up on a lot of those, while Mother 1 and Mother 3 have running mechanics, so that's much better. It was nice though that once you were high enough level, you could just literally sneak up behind an enemy, and it would like either get you a green attack, or it would auto resolve. And what I love about that, you would just like eat up the EXP. You would just be like, all right, I'm getting this. I'm just doing this. And of course, if an enemy comes up behind you and attacks you, then they get a head start, and you want to avoid that, obviously. I didn't really like how many caves there were in Earthbound. I don't know why. You walk into a cave, it plays the creepy UFO sound, and then you just be stuck in there for so long. It was really just, I don't know, aggravating. And the worst thing is that, what if you left or missed like, a present or a box or something behind? Then you would have to go back, and you didn't want to go back. Things like that. One annoying thing, I guess, about near the end of the game, that I like that they did this. It was more impactful in Mother 1, where you had a bunch of essentially notes that you had to collect, and here you were getting the same notes to the song. And I thought, one, it sounded better in Mother 1, and two, the song actually served a purpose. When you get all the notes in this one, it's just for the sake of it, I guess. There's no reason, or at least they don't tell you initially. While in Mother 1, it's like, okay, you need to find the notes for the princess to save the kingdom or something. While in this one, it's just like, go find them, because that's just a thing that exists. Like, okay, fine, whatever. It's also really good that in Mother 3, you get a teleportation in Earthbound. Near the end of the game, you get a teleportation skill, and in fact, you need a special teleportation skill because initially it's like a Back to the Future thing. You need a runway to kind of go through this, and if you don't have enough runway, you can't teleport. And then there's a certain point where you get like a teleport where you run around in a circle, and then that does it, and that's for one specific area that I think only Pooh can do. Another cool thing that I forgot to mention, that's a mechanic in this game that is, I've never seen it anywhere else, is that when you take damage in this game, it's a rolling health bar. And so what that means is that you essentially can take damage, and it says the game will say you took mortal damage, but if you actually fight and kill the enemy and you just like spam everyone does physical attacks, and you actually kill the enemy before it hits 0, you'll win the battle and keep the EXP, which I think is a really nifty mechanic. Something I really have to say that did frankly piss me off a lot in this game was the fuzzy pickles guy. I could be in the middle of like I just organized my inventory, or I need to like pick up something, and this friggin' guy, the fuzzy pickles guy, will be like, come down, he'll say the exact same long-winded dialogue and say cheese and say fuzzy pickles and take a screenshot of you on your adventure. And I like that. It's cool. I think they did it in FF15 where the screenshots you took or something would appear in your library. You can choose which one to look at. I've seen some pretty funny final screenshots of that game, but he would just interrupt you. He was so freaking annoying, and it would take a picture of you by a waterfall or something. Like, I would not care. Thank God he wasn't in Mother 3. Like, he was actually the worst. I did not enjoy that at all. And yeah, near the end, when you have to get the 7 notes of the world, it's not very good at pointing you in the right direction. I mean, usually it is, but even so, you kind of have a whole world to explore and teleport to, while in Mother 3, it's a lot more linear. You, for better or for worse, can access earlier parts of the map, so if you miss like a little item, it's like, well, it's gone forever, but usually they're not that important. And of course, all of the characters, you really need to talk to every character, especially Mother 3, because their dialogue always changes. In Earthbound, you can kind of teleport and they're going to have the same dialogue, all around the place. It was also like very super annoying that if a friend died, you had to take them to the hospital and then revive them and then go to a hotel and then rest. And I think I misspoke, there are hot springs only in Mother 3, not in this game, or there are rarely. But yeah, Earthbound it's a very interesting game. Would I say it's better than the other ones? It's definitely the most iconic, but I would say Earthbound or Mother 3 is more emotional, while Mother 1 even has its own, things to praise about it, but I think this is an overall improvement over that. The ending to Mother 1, though, is really, really impactful. I wasn't expecting to get that far even. I was like, oh, this is an RPG from 1992 that no one talks about, or 1991 or whatever. I'm not going to get into this, and I did. So Earthbound's also a fairly decent game in terms of its length. And leveling up all your items and everything, it's very, very distinct, and it's very, in its own way, respectable type of JRPG that takes place in rural America for some reason. I think what people most remember for the dialogue, the writing, the characters, and the ending, which again is just very, very crazy, and I think has a lot of very, very interesting concepts in it. One of my favorite parts of the game, they're just certain scenarios that just stand out. For example, you go into the desert and there's a giant pyramid you can't get into, and you have to rent or buy a tank from this guy and have these big battles with this big mech and busting through the pyramid. And it's all full of talking monkeys, for some reason, just crazy stuff like that. Another favorite part of the game was definitely the Mr. Saturn village, which is obviously very much influenced the Tem village. But if they were all whatever Mr. Saturn is, Mr. Saturn, he goes boing boing. It sounds so stupid to say, but that's his character or his life form. I love Mr. Saturn. Oh my gosh, I never realized how funny that part of the game was until I got there. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, Tem is obviously very much influenced by that. Other links to Undertale that arise in Nessa's Dream World, I don't think they play a big role, but there are these sunflowers that are very looking, that remind me of another kind of game. And I do think that if I actually had to compare these, I would honestly say I kind of like Undertale more than Earthbound, which I didn't really expect to say. I mean, Earthbound is different in a lot of respects, and I do like Undertale a lot. I mean, I like them both the same. Can I say that I'm going to say I like them both the same, but I expected Undertale to be missing out on some big thing that Earthbound got and nailed back. This is like an old school JRPG by a Japanese developer. I would have really expected there to be a lot more, and there is a lot more here, but just not in the way that I thought it'd be. Anyway, I don't think there's much point in me going on talking about this game. I mean, it's such a classic, influential game that everyone has praised, to death and back, that you pretty much have to play it at this point, if you want to get that distinct experience. I feel almost like you need to play all three Mother games to really get it, because they're all different and unique and special in their own ways, and each one of them is really good. Even Mother 1, yes, I would expect you to play Earthbound Beginnings, because it's actually really good, from a pacing perspective, but that's a different review. In any case, that's Earthbound. It's cool, it's great, go play it. I'll see you guys later. Bye.